David always believed he had found the perfect woman in Sarah. They met at a music festival, where their connection was instant. She was charming, full of life, and seemed to understand his restlessness. Over time, their relationship blossomed, and David felt more complete than ever. Every shared laugh and exchanged glance made him feel that he had finally found someone who completed him. However, there was something about Sarah that made her a bit distant, a shadow that sometimes crossed her gaze. David, in love and hopeful, ignored these small signs, believing that love could overcome any barrier. One night, after a romantic dinner, Sarah received a message on her phone. She hesitated before opening it, her face pale. When she realized David was watching her, she tried to disguise her anxiety, but the tension in the air was palpable. He asked if everything was okay, but Sarah just smiled and said it was work. Deep down, David felt that there was more to it. An unsettling feeling began to grow inside him, a need to understand who this woman he was sharing his life with really was. What could be so important that it made her hesitate? After a few days, David's curiosity turned into obsession. He started to investigate, looking through her social media for clues. What he found were old photos of Sarah at parties with people who seemed strange to him. There was something in their expressions and smiles that made him uncomfortable. He recalled stories he had heard about a notorious group known for their extravagant parties and questionable practices. Conversations he had with friends about the superficiality of social media echoed in his mind, and he couldn't comprehend how the woman he had fallen for could have such a dark past. Fear of betrayal began to emerge, like a growing shadow. One night, he decided to confront her. With his heart racing, he found Sarah at home, sitting on the couch with a relaxed expression. He took a deep breath and started asking about her old friends, about those parties he had seen in the photos. Sarah fell silent, looking at the floor. Her expression shifted, and David knew he had touched on something delicate. He waited, anxiety consuming him, until Sarah decided to open up. With a deep sigh, she began to speak. Sarah revealed that years ago, she had been part of a world she preferred to forget. A life marked by wild parties, substance use, and manipulative people. What seemed like a dream life for many had been a nightmare for her. The pressure to fit in, the quest for validation, all of it had led her to drift away from who she really was. David listened, stunned. Each word seemed to confirm his worst suspicions. The revelations cut deep, each one a blade slicing through his understanding of her. When she finished, silence filled the room. David felt betrayed, yet at the same time, he understood Sarah's dilemma. He remembered how she spoke of her aspirations, her dreams of a simple life far from the superficiality that surrounded her. His internal struggle was intense. He questioned whether he could love someone with such a shadowy past, if he could overcome the appearances that had now shattered. What did he really know about Sarah? How could he trust someone who had hidden her true self? In the days that followed, David withdrew. He needed space to think. Their conversations, once fluid, became rare and tense. He began to look at Sarah as if he were trying to decipher a puzzle. While walking through the city streets, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. The appearances that had once enchanted him now felt like a mask, a facade obscuring the truth. The reality was that Sarah was not just a light in his life, she was also a tangle of shadows he didn't know if he could embrace. Every time they met, David felt more distant from her. He wanted to believe that love was enough to heal wounds, but doubt consumed him. He recalled the happy moments they shared, the laughter, the dreams, and the romantic vision he had of life with her seemed to vanish. He couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah could, at any moment, slip back into that past that haunted her. The nights became long and sleepless, with David replaying every detail of their conversation, every expression on her face, every hesitation in her voice. One night, while walking in the park, David ran into a group of friends he hadn't seen in ages. They were having fun, laughing, and sharing stories. He noticed that while everyone seemed so light-hearted and happy, he felt trapped in a cycle of heavy thoughts. Conversations about relationships and trust made him uneasy. With each laugh, each shared story, he wondered if he would ever have a healthy relationship again, or if Sarah's past would forever haunt him. It was as if a dark cloud followed him, overshadowing any attempt to find joy. Weeks turned into months, and the relationship between David and Sarah became an emotional battlefield. He tried to understand his situation, but the more he thought about it, the more confused he became. The love he felt for her now intertwined with unbearable pain. He knew love could conquer many things, but could he handle Sarah's past? Memories and ghosts of a time that would not return continued to haunt him. As David struggled to understand his own pain, he realized that Sarah was also fighting her past, attempting not only to redeem herself but also to redefine who she was. One afternoon, after another argument, David decided he needed a break. He couldn't go on knowing that his heart was divided. After a long night of reflection, he resolved it was time to step back. It was a painful choice, but a necessary one. He sat down with Sarah and, his voice trembling, explained that as much as he loved her, he couldn't handle the uncertainty surrounding their relationship. The love he felt wasn't enough to erase the scars left by her past. He needed time to find himself again, away from the shadows he couldn't embrace. Sarah fell silent, her eyes filled with tears. She knew she had risked everything by opening her heart, but she understood that David was fighting his own battle. The pain in her eyes made David feel even worse. He didn't want to hurt her, but the truth was that he didn't know how to deal with what he had discovered. As he stood up and walked toward the door, he felt an immense emptiness. What had once been a dream was now a nightmare, and the future they had imagined together crumbled before his eyes. David embarked on an uncertain path, trying to find new meaning in his life. He distanced himself from Sarah, not out of lack of love, but due to his inability to cope with the truths that had surfaced between them. Weeks turned into months, and he found himself surrounded by new faces and experiences. Yet, the memory of Sarah never left him. He began to go out more with friends, explore new hobbies, and try to fill his mind with new activities. But in the quietest hours, Sarah's memory always returned, and he wondered if she had found the peace she longed for. He wanted to believe that, like him, Sarah was on a journey of transformation, trying to leave her shadows behind. He started attending a support group, where people shared stories of overcoming challenges. There, David found himself surrounded by experiences that deeply moved him. Each story of struggle and resilience made him realize that everyone carries some burden. He saw how others managed to rebuild their lives, and for a moment, he felt inspired. Yet with every new story, the pain of his separation from Sarah echoed in his chest like an open wound. He questioned whether he could ever open his heart again, whether there was space for new love after disillusionment. The truth is that appearances can be deceiving, but often what lies beneath the surface is more complicated than anyone can imagine. As David navigated this new phase of life, he began to reflect on what it truly means to trust someone. Love can be a powerful force, but it can also leave deep scars. He realized that in order to move forward, he first needed to forgive himself for his choice and ultimately understand that he wasn't solely responsible for the pain they felt. And so, as he immersed himself in new activities and friendships, a new question emerged in his mind: is love really enough to overcome the ghosts of the past? With this constant reflection, David continued his journey, grappling with the complexities of love and trust in a world where appearances can deceive and truths can be painful.